Hey, what's up? It's Primetime Football, and today we're going to be giving our Week 14 preview, just sort of talk about some things that are going to be happening this weekend, and just kind of give our thoughts on it. So let's get started. Is there any games that kind of stick out to you this weekend?
Um, I like some games: Oklahoma, Baylor, Washington State, USC, and the last one is Indiana, Wisconsin. Those three, I know they might not be like the best teams, but I just really like those games.
Mm-hmm. One game that I think is probably the most important game this weekend in terms of playoff implications is Texas A&M at Auburn. Now, Texas A&M is a contender, or not so sure if they're actually a top four team, but they are ranked 5, and they are right in the middle of the discussion. You know, Texas A&M usually around this time, their season's already over. They're just kind of playing. I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
not in the playoff situation, but right now they were off for 3 weeks. They played LSU last week. Kind of had a little bit of a struggle game. I know it was in the rain, but they kind of struggled a little bit. They need this weekend against Auburn. They need to establish themselves as a top 4 team. So if they come out here and lose, they're definitely out. If they play a close game with Auburn, I think it kind of hurts their
You're probably.
chances. So do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think if the game is within 10 points, chances are they're out of the playoff. It just depends. They have to get really lucky with the situation. Not lucky, honestly, because Notre Dame just has to beat Clemson and Bama has to beat Florida. That's the way they get in. So pretty easy. But if A&M loses to Auburn this weekend, I'm excited to see what other possible teams could make the playoff now that
Yeah, I
A&M would
think
be out.
if you are a Group of 5 fan, a Cincinnati BYU fan, you're definitely rooting for Auburn this weekend because with all the stuff going on at Ohio State, we'll talk about that in a little bit. You know, Texas A&M is probably going to get in ahead of a team like Cincinnati, so you want Texas A&M to be eliminated right now. Another game
Mm-hmm.
I do think is a little bit interesting, shouldn't really be a close game, is Florida at Tennessee. You know, Florida's kind of had some slow starts the last few weeks. They really need to come out in this game, and it doesn't really change their playoff implications, but it does change the way they're going to be going into that Alabama game. I need to see them come out this weekend and kind of blow out Tennessee. Do you have any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, they definitely. So I know LSU's having a down year, but their next game is against LSU. This should be an easy win for Florida. Of course, they'll probably have their first quarter struggles
Yeah.
like usual, but they definitely get prepared for LSU next week because that game, although LSU's not as good this year, I still think it'll be fun to watch.
All right. Let's go to the Pac-12. I know you mentioned USC versus Washington State. I think there's a few games there that might not affect the playoff, but they are important for the Pac-12 race. USC and Washington are both undefeated. Washington plays Stanford, USC, Washington. Do you think either of them have even the smallest chance of making the playoff, especially with an A&M loss this weekend?
I don't think that Washington or USC can make the playoff. Now, the path is hard, but if you go undefeated, you 100% have a chance. I don't know who would get in at USC because uh, the playoff usually favors historically good teams from what I've seen in the past. USC is one of CFB's usual powerhouses. Now, I don't know how they'll play in the context this season, and I don't know if they'd get in over Cincinnati or BYU, but they 100% have a chance. They're playing for something. Yeah,
Yeah,
these games are important.
yeah. One thing I think is worth noting is how low the committee has USC and Washington ranked in the rankings right now. I'm pretty sure USC is at like 20, and they have Cincinnati at 7. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
that's
don't know if
huge.
there's any games USC has between now and the end of the season that can kind of put them above Cincinnati. So I do think if it came down to an undefeated Cincinnati and undefeated USC, I think they would favor Cincinnati in that situation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Alabama LSU. What a game that was last year. There's been some cancellations and postponements in that game. It seems as if Alabama has been really trying to play it, and LSU's sort of been dodging. Go ahead and tell me your thoughts on that game.
So it's an 8 o'clock game in Death Valley, which actually is surprising because Bama has not allowed a point. I think the statistic is correct. Alabama has not allowed a point to LSU in Death Valley since 2014. So usually Alabama does typically play better in Death Valley. They have a 94% chance to win. All around the board, we're better. They have had some players start to sit out. Clearly, they don't want that Alabama smoke. And I do think Bama will cover the spread this game because we are looking for revenge. Our defense is going to play lights out, I think.
This game shouldn't be very close. And usually what you see with a Nick Saban team is obviously they're dominating teams a lot, so there's a lot of sample for this. There gets a point in the game when it's like 30-point difference, and Alabama kind of just slows everything down. They kind of call off the dogs a little bit, and they don't try to blow them out anymore on purpose, at least. I do think with a lot of this stuff happening last year and a lot of the stuff that Orgeron said, the thing in the locker room, I think everybody knows that video. I do think there's going to be a little bit of revenge from Alabama that they want in this game. So I do think there's not really going to be a point where Alabama just slows things down. They're going to go full throttle the entire game and very ugly. So I also think Alabama will cover very easily.
Yep.
Now on to Ohio State. A lot of people think they're a top 4 team, including myself. But I think their path to the playoff is extremely hard right now because they've played 4 or 5 games.
4 have one more than the Pac-12 team. So put that into context, considering they're 4th, with their best win is over Indiana, who was a top 10 team at the time. And then you have undefeated USC and Washington.
So Ohio State's 4-0 right now. They've had 2 games canceled. Now they have Michigan State and Michigan. There's some COVID stuff going on with this game this weekend. I'm pretty sure they are going to end up playing it. But next week, when they play Michigan, I think you might see Michigan completely try to dodge that game. And if that game ends up getting canceled, Ohio State is not eligible for the Big Ten championship. That will keep them out of the playoffs. So it's interesting to see sort of what Michigan does this next week. They control Ohio State's fate, which is kind of funny, to be honest with you.
Do you 100% think that if Ohio State does not play in the Big Ten championship game, they will not make the playoff?
I don't think they could make it if that happens. What would they be, 5-0? That's just not enough. Like they may be the 4th best team in the country or the 3rd best team in the country, and I'm sure a lot of people will still believe that. But at some point, you can't put them in.
Yeah.
After only 5 games, it's just not fair to the rest of the teams. I would have a 2-loss Florida, a 2-loss Clemson in over them like that.
I've heard some recent rumors about how the Big Ten might change their ruling on that.
Yeah.
You have to play 6 games before the season even ends. Because they know that Ohio State's their only chance to the playoff, and they're all about money there. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they'll do everything they can to try to keep Ohio State in the playoffs. But at the end of the day, they did this themselves. It was terrible management at the beginning of the season.
Yep.
So anyways, that's going to do it for the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below. Thank you.